Welcome back to another episode of A Gift from Adversity. Thank you so much for tuning in. My name is Juri Love. Today we're recording episode 123. Before I introduce my guest, I want to introduce my book, which is the same title as this podcast. It's called A Gift from Adversity. This was published in 2020. This is about my story. The subtitle of this book is Overcoming Sexual Abuse, Domestic Violence, Bullying, and Homelessness. After I published this book, I got a lot of messages from people sharing their stories, and I felt very compelled to start a platform where we can talk about adversity safely, but not only that, sharing the tools that people use to overcome, and then a gift that came from it. So let's welcome our guest today. Hi, Bridget. Thank you very much for coming in.
Hi, thank you for having me.
Absolutely. So, can you tell our audience where you're coming in from today, your name, if you have social media or anything you want to shout out?
Yeah, absolutely. I am from the Midwest in the US, and my name is Bridgette Gildemaster. My socials, I'm very active on Facebook and Instagram. I also have a LinkedIn and YouTube channel.
What is the handle?
It's just my name, Bridgette Gildemaster.
And what are the social that you do? What kind of things do you promote?
I love to talk about relationship abuse and religious abuse. So, healing from that and the awareness of how to spot toxicity, how to spot being unloved, and what that looks like, how you're being treated.
Thank you. So, let's dive into the first question, which is the adversity. So, can you tell our audience what was your adversity?
Yeah, so my story began clear back in my upbringing. I was raised in a very religious home. I'm still a Christian, but there were so many rules and expectations and just lots of things. I don't even think half of the people recognize our thoughts around that allow abuse to be hidden, allow especially women to be harmed and abused. And so I grew up a lot with those kind of thought processes. So my biggest thing was get married and start having babies. And so that was my goal. I didn't really have a career. I didn't aim for anything high. So when I met my first husband at 21 and got married very quickly at 22, I thought I had made it. I thought I had, you know, um, done everything right, gone through all the steps. But prior to us getting married, he had confessed to me that he had a really heavy porn addiction. It really wasn't explained to me how that would affect me or our relationship. So of course I just was like, yeah, we'll get through that. We can get through anything. Love conquers all, right? And so within 3 weeks into our marriage, it was a problem. And we tried working through it. Of course, I did all the things religion tells you of have more sex, make sure the house is clean, cook meals, be the good wife. And it obviously was never enough, never fixed anything. Finally, about 2.5 years in, we went to counseling. We already had a baby boy who had a heart condition. And so we did a lot with medical stuff. We actually ended up moving 10 hours from where we were originally living so that he could have proper medical care. So I did have a lot on my plate. I had a miscarriage previously to that. And so once he was born, I really wanted to know if I could have just a baby without complications. And so I was pregnant again and had another little girl 11 months after that. And so they were very close together. And at that time, I finally said, we need to go to counseling. I can't keep living like this. I couldn't keep going in the circles. My brain kept playing so many games. I would see one little progress in him or think this was good or that was good, or his behavior would change and then be just as heartbroken within hours. And I couldn't do it anymore. And so we started going to counseling through a church, and um, it would seem, like we'd sit in counseling for an hour every week, and he would grasp concepts and be like, yes, this or that, or we'd even dig deeper into maybe some childhood trauma or pains or things affecting him, but it never lasted through the week. It seemed like a totally different person came home with me. And so finally, I don't know what allowed him to, but he also confessed to me that he had sexual desires towards our 1-year-old daughter at that time. And I was actually pregnant again, which I didn't know was another little girl. But within that time frame, I said that was enough for me. That was, for whatever reason, I knew that was something I was not going to live with. I was not going to try and protect my daughters from, or even emotionally protect myself anymore from. And so I left within a week. I had a lot of support from friends and family in the leaving aspect of moving and everything, but it was still really rough. My church told me I actually didn't have a right to leave. I was put up for excommunication by one of the elders. It was brought forward, and thankfully, another church got involved, and I was able to explain the situation. And that didn't happen in that instance. To me, that was really important at the time. So I was never actually kicked out, but I went through hearing everything about how that wasn't, he actually hadn't done anything yet. It was my duty to protect. It was my duty to save the marriage. It was more important to stay together than be separated. All of those things, I heard all of them. Even after the divorce was final, I was asked, do you think there's any possibility of going back with the father? I went through all of that. And so that's been my biggest struggles and my story of what I've been through. And so it's been a journey since then of healing.
First of all, let's go back a little bit. So I really appreciate you coming in and then sharing this vulnerable story, and then I really appreciate you being an advocate for this very issue. Now, for somebody like myself who is not religious and don't have a concept of Christianity at all, because I am from Japan. I've never
Mhm.
seen church in my life. And now you are a little bit outside of what religion can do to put you through to this kind of abusive situation that should be tolerated. I don't think it's just the Christianity sometimes, but some cultural pressure. Like my culture, Japanese culture, we women supposed to not walk in front of men.
Mhm.
Um, I've never seen men hold doors for women. I've never seen my male family member pick up something or do some chores much.
Mhm.
My aunt wasn't allowed to go to school, and it's a lot of gender gap. And sadly, um, even last year, Japan, however, is one of the most advanced technology, economically successful country. The gender gap chart shows that we are worst number 9.
Wow.
So that's what's up against.
Mhm.
But religion is a choice, and it's a freedom of religion is amendment number 1. However, when you're a child, you don't know that.
Mhm.
So, how was it like to have so much pressure getting married, whatever it takes to keep the marriage, and how did it play in your brain when you look back in terms of the pressure and brainwash and all that stuff that you are not allowed to do these things, which is advocacy and safety?
Mhm. Yeah, no, very true. I love everything you said about your own culture. And I do think it is a lot of social norms. In the areas that I grew up in, it's large in religion, but there are even, I have ran into women who are not Christians, and they grew up with the same, patriarchy is very very well spread, and same things. And yeah, as being indoctrinated in it as a child, to be like, this is what's right, this is what will protect you, this is what will keep you safe, this is what will give you a happy life, these are the answers, follow the rules, and you'll be fine. And so in that, it played still plays. I still, as much as I've deconstructed and, I'm on my own spiritual journey, there are so many things about religion that I didn't even know were other beliefs or concepts, or diving into that I've actually been fed several ideas of certain areas of religion, and they were used against me to make me behave a certain way, or to make a child behave a certain way. Common sayings you'll hear, half truths, things like that. And so to undo all of those and deconstruct all of those has been like I'm a new person, to bring that forward. It's been very interesting. I have 4 children of my own with that, and so, like, raising them with that perspective of, "This is what mommy believes, this is what I'm working through. I don't know the answer to that. This is what other people could believe, and it's your choice, what if you want to believe that or not," has been very healing even for myself and my own inner child, um, to know what resonates with me. Um, but yeah, the pressure, it's still something I think I struggle with, because as a single mom of 4, out on my own, I struggle, right? There's always going to be there's only so many hands to do all the things that need done in a day. And so I always kind of still feel like I'm failing, and I'll never reach that mark, even though I'm working on that. I'm working on that mindset, but it is still very much a pressure of, well, that's because you need to get married, and because you need to do this, or you should have done that.
How is your relationship with your parents or different family members who still believe in that religion? And like, have you gotten like backlash and disowning and then some pressures still?
Yeah, my relationships are still really good. My family is very supportive. They're always there for me. I don't know if they always understand. When I jump into something, I tear it to pieces. So I'm not one, if it's interested to me, I dig until I find all the options anymore. I question everything, and that's not always the same path for everyone, and I understand that. Some are very, happy where they are and where they've chosen to be. But yeah, our relationships are still very good. I have very supportive parents.
Sometimes that's a challenge because, I've had friends or, some close people that did not believe what family believed
Mhm.
and then called black sheep or getting disowned by it. So it's kind of surprising that your parents are okay with you and your decisions, and that's really rare.
Mhm. Yeah, it is. In helping other women or talking through them, I've had to walk, I've kind of walked with them in that journey of having to step away from their parents because they just couldn't even get through a conversation together anymore. So it is rare for sure.
Let's talk about red flags and then the abuse that you had experienced and the marriage. You said your ex-husband had these addictions and stuff. How was it like when you were married to somebody who had that severe addiction and then wasn't able to fix it, but you already had a child, and then hearing that's like sick comment about your daughter? How was it like emotionally?
Yeah, it's so emotional. And especially in our society where I think, even in Christianity and religion, porn is kind of accepted. It's especially for men, it is a, well, men lust. And so, oh well, you know. It's very, not considered cheating. It's not considered, all these things. It's not considered enough to leave your husband. Is it good? No. They'll tell you there's consequences to it, and that, it's harmful and hurtful to your marriage, but it's not enough to leave. I don't even know what they would call it, if they'd even just say a character flaw. But in that, they don't understand that as a woman, and especially being raised where your husband has picked you out of all the women, because you should feel so valuable to have been picked to be married. And then, sexually, he doesn't desire you. He doesn't want you. He would tell me he would masturbate at work several times a day. And then, of course, so when he came home, he wasn't, didn't want to have any relations with me. He would tell me things like, "Oh, well, I had to think of other women on my drive home just to get excited to come home to you." So just a very mental mind game in your head. And, when you're trying to make something work, we justify everything. And we being told that men are men, and not being raised with no, men are humans just like women are humans, and can be raised to that same standard of everything I was trying to be, hold to, that you make excuses. Well, I guess maybe, I don't know. I'm not a man. And now, yes, learning the red flags of obviously, no, men are not animals. They have self-control. They can be healthy human beings, just like women can be. They can, control that, and there's a healthy sexuality out there. Um, and learning, obviously, like, if, um, like, character wise, there were so many things I didn't pick up on when we were dating, because I didn't know what character flaws were. Um, Very much raised to trust people in my church group, even if maybe some certain comments were made about certain people, but it was very a trusting community. You knew a family, you liked a family, they weren't murderers, so it was okay. And so not learning to look for those character issues, whether it be integrity or honesty necessarily, or, personality, or how they treated women, or what was going on, the deep, hard questions, right? You don't want to have those hard questions with, just a friend, that you especially don't know very well. Those are hard conversations to have. So very surface level emotions that were there that I had no idea how to dig into on my own.
Bridget, I don't know how many people are suffering with this religious abuse and then concept of you should tolerate. I just want to highlight that again, I am not religious, like I'm not Christian. I don't know anything about Christianity, and we have this thing called danson johi. It's not a religion, but it's a word in in Japan. It's hugely tolerated. It's men respected, women disrespected. Danson johi. So I was actually dating somebody, and I would never, he's American, and I would never walk in front of him. And he was so uncomfortable. He pushed me, just, walk in front of me. But I just couldn't do it.
Mhm.
And my mother, for instance, my first husband and I had a big wedding, and he's American. When his father came to is tell her to go before him on the elevator, she would not move. My mom would not move. So it's something that, you know, if the entire country has that concept, you will not know until you really step outside. Like I'm in America, every time men holds the door for me or opens the car door for me or something, I'll be so like mortified or like, like humbled, but like, I don't know if I deserve it, you know what I mean? Because
Yeah.
I was raised that way, you know what I mean? So I think the conceptual thing is hard, but sometimes there are pros and cons. There are some ethic and then some of the beautiful things that comes out from the religion that, you know, certain characteristic things.
Mhm.
However, some of the things that say porn is tolerated or it's okay, right? And that's something somebody made it up and said it's okay because of the escape or whatever. And the things that your ex said about, oh, I was thinking about other women and or masturbated or work, and then saying that to your face, and you have to say that's a complete psychological abuse,
Mhm.
emotional abuse, totally disrespectful for you and your dignity and your sexuality and relationship itself. So that is absolutely a no-no. But then I can't believe that other people say, for instance, at the church, that it's not okay to divorce. Would you want to go back? Especially after the fact he showed interest in your 1-year-old daughter. That is a sickening thing. So it is really difficult when your entire society or country around you are pressuring you with one aspect of the justice until you really stepped outside, like remove yourself completely to a different country or completely to a different environment. And most people cannot do that. So that's the trap.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Everything you said was spot on. Yeah. It is crazy because, and that's those circles you're in, you feel like you were brave and you spoke up and you did say something, and then you were still told no. And then, but then once you got out of, I got out of that and got into bigger circles, and people were horrified. And I was like, well, yeah, like it took me even a while to be, and I was processing. Obviously, you don't know it's ever going to happen to you. And it took me years to actually process that happened, that's what happened, and think through that on that deeper healing level. And, you know, but the first couple people I still remember being like, shocked. I was frozen because I was like, the response was not what I had been getting in my circles. And so, yeah, to get out, and yeah, a lot of people can't, and it's very heartbreaking. Even here in America, it's very heartbreaking how many women have to stay for, or feel like they have to stay for financial reasons, for other support that they are getting, and they don't know that it's abusive, like you said. I still struggle, just speaking to men, honestly. It has been something I have consciously had to get over and to hold space for myself. Even in a room, standing with my legs a little wider and taking up that physical space has been something I've had to work on, because when men would walk into the room, it's a man. I'm supposed to be ladylike. I'm supposed to be polite. I'm supposed to be respectful. They're the man. They're the, I was raised to believe they're the head of the household. They have the final say. And so, of course, that being raised in that as a child, emulated outside of, just the home. That's how I view all men. And so, to this day, I still have a hard time just talking to men sometimes. And so I resonate with what you were saying about walking in front of men. That is a hard thing to heal from and work through. And, it's okay if you don't, too.
It is such a hard thing, the gender inequality, um, the concept itself, and I have no answer to this, but I am extremely grateful that you are shedding light to this issue that sometimes people just cannot speak up about it. And then, Bridget, I just wanted to highlight a lot of times when people get abused, it's not the abuse incident itself, but it's the second and third shock waves, backlashes, disagreement, and people not supporting you. Those are, I found, sometimes harder than the initial abuse.
Yeah, re-traumatization. I just actually saw that word in something else. I've thought the same thing for a long time, but I actually saw a post on social media where someone called it re-traumatization, being re-traumatized by the event because you are being, retold you're unvaluable, even though you took those brave steps to make a change. And when you were in a safe place, you were looking for help, you were looking for hope, you were just looking for a space to be held for you, even just to be listened to. And instead, you are re-traumatized all over again by that person telling you you're not valuable enough to leave. You're not valuable enough to be heard. Suck it up and deal with it. Yeah, absolutely.
So my story in my book, for instance, the initial sexual abuse and trauma done by my dad was not believed by my mom when I told her. So that's when I tried to kill myself when I was 15 years old. So I think invalidating the trauma by trusted person that you confide with, especially the first person, that is really hard. And then the people that you thought that they are trustworthy, the people at the church that you pretty much, created a safety net, that when you are actually getting abused, they didn't help you. But instead, they validated him, not you, and condemned you and for not leaving that unhealthy, I mean, like, just you cannot leave that unhealthy relationship. But instead, you have to suck it up and then be a good wife, right? So that is sometimes much harder fight than initial abuse, and that's so hard.
Yeah. Yeah. So that's when I finally was leaving and done. I had left, but I was still, I believed I needed to keep up my standing in the church. I believed that this was what was still right at the time. And so it was very important to me to get this approval, right, of leaving. And so when I would talk to, it was two different churches. And so one church I was speaking directly with an elder, and the other church I was speaking directly with a pastor from, in the same denomination. But, I would tell the elder the same things I'd tell this pastor, and the elder would just, completely blow me off. And he's the one who suggested I be put up for excommunication. And when I talked to the pastor about it, and I would say things down to, you expect me to get back into bed with a man who has openly told me he has stronger sexual desires toward my 1-year-old baby than me, and you want me to sleep next to him? And I remember that specific comment was a very pivotal point in the conversation of, oh, he finally realized the emotional trauma that I was going through. And to some extent, I don't know how deep that was, but it finally was enough to realize, you're asking me to live with this every single day. This isn't just a push through and go through. This is every waking moment of my life. When you're married to someone, when you're in love with someone, and then on top of it, they have love bombed you. They've gotten you emotionally attached to them in that way, in that toxic way, to where, and all you want to do is fix it and feel back. You want to feel that safe space, and you're not getting that. It becomes obsessive in your mind. And they couldn't understand that, until I got very, very, graphic, or not graphic, but very detailed about, this is the life I'd be living. This is what you're asking me to walk through every moment, every day for the rest of my life. And, so in that, I had to fight to leave all over again. I had already left, right? Because my circles weren't supporting me. I had to fight all over again. And it was, the first people I had talked and told about. I actually lost friends over it. I called up, my friends. I was like, well, I'm not, there anymore. I left, however long it had been, all the things, just letting and also, hey, how you're doing? How are you doing? But in there, but I never heard from them again for a very long time. And I understand most people don't know how to respond to things and stuff like that. But to me, the person going through it, just a call or a text of, hey, how are you doing, would have meant more than complete silence, because that silence is supporting the abuse. When we don't speak up and say, I believe you, or what you're doing is right, or just be that emotional support, you are supporting the abuser.
It's unbelievable that this is what I think, and then correct me if I'm wrong. I feel like you not only got single person, abusing you emotionally, sexually, threatening your daughter to be raped, but also collectively, you got ganged up by people who told you to tolerate the abuse and silenced, neglected, and completely like outcast and bullied. And I think that's what happened to you. What do you think?
Yeah, that would be a very good way of putting it. Yeah. Yeah, it was definitely, and it was hard for me all over again because again, only men are leaders in that church and denomination. And so it was all by men. So very traumatizing all over again, very bullied, very manipulated back into their world. Yeah.
And why is porn tolerated? And then why is porn is okay things? Because that's kind of the beginning of your ex-husband's education. If somebody says okay when he was growing up, that would have been different, no?
Mhm. Yeah, I don't know. It is, I mean, like I said, it wouldn't be an open, oh yeah, it's totally fine, no worries. It's not treat it's a very gaslighting situation, very manipulated, very much, told, no, it's not okay, that's not good, that's not healthy in any relationship. It's going to harm you, it's going to harm your wife. They will even tell their teenage boys that. But it's never taken any further. It's never taken further to actually, work with that person. And, I honestly don't know all the answers to that either in a person who does need help with that kind of addiction. I know people who help with it. I just don't know the process. But that's where it is, and it's laid. And it's actually, it's kind of laid there with like, well, they just have that problem. They just are struggling with that. Getting married will help is a huge one. He just needs to get married. He just has a sexual problem. And because they believe that you shouldn't have sex until you're married. So that's usually how they tolerate that is, well, once he's married, he'll have the real thing and then that won't be a problem anymore. Well, that's obviously not true. We know that. The research shows us that pornography is so much more addictive than, because it just how it stimulates the brain, how it's not real. You're looking for something that isn't real. It can't be mimicked or recreated in the brain. And so you don't get that same emotional high, that same oxytocin running through the body in the same stimulating way. And so, so it's very, as much as they condemn it, there's aren't the actionable steps taken to actually help somebody with that kind of addiction. And therefore, it's just, something you have to work through, um, like I said, yeah, getting married is a huge one. They'll just be like, well, he just needs to get married. So,
I have no idea the situation, but the pornography, like in Japan, for instance,
mhm.
is hugely tolerated. And if you go on a train, you see a man next to you opening up porn magazine
Mm.
in public,
Wow.
and it's tolerated. And there's a lot of manga, the anime,
Mm.
depicts a lot of sexual scenes. And a lot of people are addicted to that as well. And it's a huge thing.
Mhm.
And I have never really heard of the addiction part of it, and that penetrates through healthy marriage, how it affects the other partner. This is my first story
Mm.
I've ever heard. But, when you talk about alcoholism, when you talk about opioid, drug addiction, people would be like, oh, that's why you left your ex. But then when you talk about porn addiction, it's a completely different animal that is not talked about. It's not normal. The people don't understand the magnitude of same oxytocin, the brain chemical, that you can never get satisfied with the real thing since maybe when he was young.
Mhm.
So how would you replace that? Same thing as alcohol or drug addiction. But these are the things that people do not talk about because it's embarrassing and it's not openly talked about often. So that is an extra pressure for you too.
Yeah, it definitely is. And it's a hard conversation. So even so with that, from such a young age, he did tell me, I think it was 9 years old when he saw his first porn magazine, is what it was. And so, very young age. And that's what's hard, and I can sympathize with that as a parent. My son is 8 years old now, and those aren't the things you want to talk about with your 8-year-old, but it's real life. And, especially coming from my background in history, it's very hard for me. But those hard conversations are what matter. They're what changes their life and the lives of people who come into their lives. And having those open conversations at a very young age is so vitally important. Making things normal is so vitally important. In children, a lot of times in the circles I grew up in, we didn't even name body parts, was a huge thing. And those are very well known things of predators now. That's ways of covering up abuse, is because a predator won't actually name what they're doing with a child. They'll call it fun things. I think cookie is a new one. Things like that. Pocketbook. There's different names used for body parts and actions that they're doing, and therefore the kids aren't even thinking twice about it. Whereas if you have a child who has been educated well on their body parts, their anatomy, what is going on, and something happens, and the kid says, "Hey, you're touching my vulva or my vagina or my breast," the predator actually will usually tend to back off because this child clearly knows what is going on. They're educated enough to know, and that scares them because they don't know what they're they didn't realize what they walked into. And so a huge part.
Sorry, I lost your voice. Hello? Hello?
Right there now?
Yes, I can hear you now.
Oh, I can't hear you though.
Really? Oh, I can hear you fine.
Are
Testing.
you there now?
Yes, I can hear you.
Hmm. One, two, one. Okay, that's working.
I can hear you. You cannot hear me?
I can't hear you.
Oh,
Yeah.
do you have a headset? Hello?
Ah, there you are.
Oh, okay,
Okay. I'm not sure what happened, but
that's okay. So
cool.
people can tell that we are on live. So
That's
that's okay. Technical thing happened. So Bridget, let's actually pick it up for from what we're talking about body parts. So I want to echo it with you. I just recently became a certified facilitator for darkness to light. I don't know if you know darkness to light. Um, so in the darkness to light training, which is to prevent child sex abuse, is the crucial part is to teach child the body parts, like you said, because a lot of perpetrator, like you said, oh, my daddy ate my cookie or something like I don't, it's just really disgusting, but it starts there. So education is important. So I want to move on to the second question, which is the tools that you use to overcome. So before that, thank you again for sharing so much about your adversity. And I know this is not an easy conversation, and I know you have social media and advocating, but each time I know it brings a lot of trauma in you. So I appreciate it, and then I appreciate your bravery, and then I'm sorry that happened to you and your family.
Thank you. Yeah.
So what are the tools that you think was absolutely helpful that you were able to use to overcome these adversities?
Yeah, I think there's a lot. I think there's different stages everyone goes through in healing, and everyone's healing journey looks different, for sure. But, so over a lot of it is sitting with yourself, I think was the biggest one. Once I really started to heal, I did a lot of journaling and I would just type and type and type. I was actually up really early in the morning. It was, spring, so daylight, unlike right now, which is really hard, but, up really early in the morning before my kids were up. And whatever I was thinking about, whatever little thought was in my head or story or incident, even in my childhood that was going on in my head, I started typing. And I started, I don't know if you've heard of brain dump journaling, but I kind of took that concept, but into the surface levels of what was going on to my head and was able to dig so deep into some childhood memories, some things that had happened in my marriages or with my kids and younger years, being out on my own and just be able to get it out, to talk about it in the privacy of my laptop. Nobody else saw it but me. I could say whatever I wanted about whoever I wanted. And, there was so much healing in that because I was able to admit the things that hurt me. Because growing up where feelings weren't normal, feelings, especially as a girl, you're dramatic, you're sensitive, you're all the things, those things aren't praised at all. They're very much looked down upon. To actually be able to feel those things and acknowledge even in childhood, let alone what happened to me in my marriage, was a huge healing step for me. I've actually there's been so much healing in that. There were stories in my life that just would affect me. I talk about them a lot or think about them a lot and worry about them. And once I was able to write them down, I don't even remember half of them. I recently, through being able to advocate, on social media and stuff, I was like, I should go back and look at that and see what parts would help someone else. And there were things I read that I was like, oh my gosh, I haven't thought of that in years. And I used to think about it all the time. It would just haunt my brain. And I was able to heal and, allow it to flow through me instead of being trapped in my body. So that was one of the biggest things that helped me.
I've never heard of brain dump journaling.
Okay, so the concept of brain dump journaling is to get up. Well, you don't have to do it in the morning, but to take at least 10 minutes. And so even if you don't feel like journaling, you just start writing or typing. And so, if you could just go, the sky is blue, there's really fluffy clouds, my couch is, dirty, or, you just write whatever is going on in your head to get the juices flowing, I guess, and to get those surface level thoughts out so that way you can dig in deeper. And usually most people find like by the end of the 10 minutes, they can't stop because they finally dug into their inner self, right? Like our intuition, our self, our true self, we turn off. We turn off our inner critic. We turn off our inner thoughts all day long to do what is socially acceptable of us or what is needed in a job or as a parent or, as a friend. And so to actually connect back in with you is huge.
I'm interested in because I am a journalist. Grammarly,
Yes. Mm-hmm.
I typed 7 million words.
Oh, wow.
I type 20 to 30,000 words for my job, but not my personal. And I have several personal blogs and that are very, very important to me, but I've never done journaling because I'm always typing. So I don't know the effect of the journaling personally because I'm a journalist already. So it's very interesting, but I like the idea of being able to brain dump, I've never heard of it,
Mhm.
and vent through
Mhm.
writing. But then I think looking back might be interesting, like 5 years from now.
Yeah, it really is interesting. And sometimes it's nothing, earth shattering, but boy, if you get one of those days, it can be you started out with fluffy clouds, and by the end of it, you dug up some pretty deep stuff that, I dug up stuff that also, I didn't even realize I was thinking about anymore. And it was like, oh, that's why that bothered me because this was hiding over here, and I didn't know it.
Do you do it every day?
I did at that time. I don't quite do the same thing right now. Um, I definitely have. I've been looking for my word of next year, and that has been one of the things I have thought of re-challenging myself with. This year, I did experiences. So I never said no to an experience or an opportunity this year, which brought me to a miraculous place. And so next year, that was actually one of a couple things I was debating about doing is making sure I write some more because of the new place I'm in. There's new things. I have that feeling. But at that time, I did. I think I did over like 20 chapters because I was kind of doing it in a book form. And I think I did, each chapter just had like 20,000 words or something. And I know that may not be a lot to some, but for me, it was a lot. And so, yeah, it was just huge. I just typed and typed. I typed for like 3 hours every morning for like 3 or 4 months. So, and I'm not a fast typer, but yeah, just whatever, it just flowed. And yeah.
How do you think it helped you to maybe reorganize your brain or cleanse yourself?
Yeah, I think, I don't know if you've ever heard of the book The Body Keeps Score. It's a very heavy book. I've only been able to read bits and pieces of it because he's so thorough. Like it gets really deep. But I really believe in that. I really believe that our body traps emotions. I really believe it's held in pain. I believe it's expressed in autoimmune diseases, weight loss, weight gain. How just certain memories can get trapped in the body. I really believe in energy and that we need to have that flow of energy. And so, I think that being able to release that it was a safe place. It was truly the safest place I've ever been in because it was my space. I chose to make a space for me where no matter what came out of me, I loved it, I accepted it, I allowed it to be a part of myself for that moment, and then I chose whether or not I wanted to keep it with me or leave it in those words. And that's really what we all need until we are in that space of love and acceptance, in a safe space and a space held for us in that we really can't heal from some things.
Well, Bridget, thank you very much.
Yeah, thank you for having me.
Yes, absolutely. And another thing I want to ask about the tools, so you kind of mentioned it, but then bravery in the removing yourself from the collective belief that was abusing you. Do you have any tools that you use to completely take yourself away from or being able to see it objectively?
I don't think I'm a very good expert in the smoothest, healthiest way to do that. But for me, and what I did do was I just cut it off and I walked away. I made drastic moves. Sometimes it was halfway across the country. I quit talking to certain people after confronting them, or, that's been the best way for me. I used to keep in contact more with my husband for certain things with the kids financially. He would support me. And, one day I just realized it wasn't even worth that. And I just quit. I just will never respond to anything ever again. And that has been the best medicine for me, because when you're in a psychologically abusive relationship, an emotionally abusive relationship that you are attached to, I mean, some part of me in my heart still has a fantasy of love for him as my husband, because that's what it should have been. And so when you tap into that part of you, you know, well, you won't ever always see everything that's going on. When you got half a foot in and half a foot out, in the door, and you'll never see all the toxicity you've been put through till you completely remove yourself. There's been situations where they fizzle out on their own even, and a couple weeks later I realized, whoa, that was way worse than I thought it was. You don't always realize what you're dealing with, especially when you've already been forced to put everybody else's needs before yours to cope and just keep going. It's just like a what I want to say, it's like a just like second nature. It's second nature to you to just do that.
Well, thank you so much again. So, Bridget, my last question is a gift that came from your adversity. So, what would you say a gift that came from your adversity?
I think my biggest gift is freedom. I'm my own person now. I'm able to choose what I believe. I'm able to have my own thoughts, be able to discern on my own what I want to believe, be able to discern who I want to allow in my life, why I want them in my life, or why I don't want them in my life, without any more judgment, because still working on it, but I don't people please anymore. What's best for their life or what they think is best for the fantasy of my life is not best for me. And so allowing myself, it's a daily reminder, but allowing myself to be in that space of, this is me, this is who I am, and no one else knows even the most smallest of detail, that my self-conscious does know why I'm making the decisions I'm making.
Freedom.
Yes.
It is very interesting. I just want to comment quickly before you go. In America, Amendment number 1 is freedom of speech, freedom of press, and freedom of religion. So you have every right to believe whatever you want to believe. However, as a child, sometimes it's hard to see that. And then as an adult, when you step out some of the things that you disagree with, you're completely okay to do so. But then a lot of people don't think that way, unfortunately. But I just want to remind you and then remind the audience, those are our ancestors who fought for these human rights, and you're entitled to have that every day. That's why I am journalist. I have a freedom press exercising that every day in a speech and a religion. So it is your human right amendment number one. And there's a reason why that comes one, I think, than five, which you don't have to speak to anyone if you don't want to. But then why is it number one? Because of this toxicity, and then also abuse and control that our ancestors were trying to protect it from. So obviously, the good part of the religion, again, we talked about that. But then, obvious reasons such as yours, you don't have to stay in it. You always have a freedom, like you said, a gift that came from it. Freedom of speech, press, and religion are protected human rights, amendment number one. So I just wanted to remind you and then remind our audience of that.
Yeah. Yeah. Very well said. Yeah.
Well, thank you very much again for coming to A Gift from Adversity today.
Yes, thank you, Juri. Thank you. You're such an amazing woman. You have so much to offer yourself. This has been great.
Thank you. And thank you to our audience for listening to another episode of A Gift from Adversity. We'll see you next time.